Black child asks for milk at the millionaire's door. Her words leave him speechless. Robert Miller was reviewing contracts when he heard the doorbell ring. It was Sunday morning, one of the few quiet moments in his busy routine as a successful businessman. Mrs. Jenkins, his housekeeper of 20 years, had left to visit family, leaving him alone in the vast mansion in the upscale neighborhood of New York City. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Robert sighed, set the papers down on the mahogany table and walked to the door. When he opened it, he was met with a girl of about 8 years old. She had dark skin, curly hair tied in messy braids, and wore a worn-out blouse that had seen better days. "Good morning, sir," the child said in a sweet but determined voice. "Do you have a little milk? My mom is sick, and I need to make her some porridge." Robert looked at the girl with surprise. How had she gotten past the security of the gated community? And why had she chosen his house out of all the others? "How did you get in here, child?" he asked, keeping the door only slightly ajar. The girl didn't seem intimidated. Instead, she lifted her chin and looked him straight in the eyes with a courage that unsettled him. "I know all the paths around here. I work at Mr. Thompson's bakery on the other side of the wall." She pointed in the direction she had come from. "But I didn't just come for the milk, sir." Robert was about to close the door when the girl said something that made him freeze mid-motion. "My mom said you're my grandfather." The world seemed to stop. Robert felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. Those words echoed in his mind several times before he could process what he had just heard. "What did you say?" he managed to ask, his voice hoarse. The girl reached into her blouse pocket and pulled out a yellowed, folded photograph. Carefully, she handed it to him. "Look here. My mom said this photo is proof. You're right here, see?" With trembling hands, Robert took the photograph. It was an old picture, probably from the 90s, showing him embracing a young black woman. Both were smiling at the camera, seemingly at some company event. He recognized the image immediately. It was from the old construction office when it was still downtown. Where did you get this?" he asked, barely able to speak. "It's my mom's. She keeps it in an old album with other pictures." The girl tilted her head, studying his reaction. "Do you remember her?" "My mom's name is Tanya Williams." The name echoed in Robert's mind like distant thunder. Tanya Williams. Yes. He vaguely remembered an employee by that name. She had worked in the company's administrative department many years ago, but the connection the child was suggesting was impossible. "Child, listen," he began, but she interrupted him. "My name is Jasmine Williams. And I know you never had kids, but my mum said sometimes life is complicated. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now, continuing. Robert felt like he needed to sit down. The situation was completely out of control. He had never had children. That was an absolute certainty in his life. After losing his wife Elizabeth 15 years ago, he had devoted himself entirely to business. There had never been serious relationships, much less children. "Jasmine, I think your mom might be mistaken. I never..." He paused, seeing the hopeful look in the girl's eyes. "Where do you live?" "In Riverside Heights. It's not too far from here, but it's very different." Jasmine lowered her gaze for a moment. "My mum is really sick. She hasn't been able to work for a long time, and we don't have money to buy medicine properly." Something in the child's tone struck a chord in Robert's heart. Maybe it was the dignity with which she spoke about their struggles, or the mature way she handled the situation. "And why did you come here? Why do you think I'm your grandfather?" Jasmine lifted her eyes again, and Robert saw in them a mix of hope and despair that made his chest tighten. "Because my mom said when she was pregnant, you were the only person at the company who was kind to her. She said you always treated her with respect, unlike the other bosses." The girl took a deep breath. "She said that when I was born, if we ever really needed help, we could come to you." Robert closed his eyes for a moment. There was something in that story that didn't add up, but at the same time, he felt he couldn't just send the child away. "Your mom, is she home now?" "Yeah, home now, but she doesn't know I came here." Jasmine nervously fiddled with her braids. She'd be mad if she knew. She said we couldn't bother you, that it was all in the past. Then why did you come? Because she coughed up blood last night, and I got really scared. The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back with determination. I don't want to be alone, mister. I know I'm just a kid, but I'll do anything. I can clean your house, do laundry, cook. I learned fast. Robert's heart ached even more. There was something about this child that moved him deeply. Maybe her courage, her early maturity, or simply the desperation masked as resolve. Listen, Jasmine. You said you don't live far from here. No, sir. About 20 minutes walking. How about I walk you back? I'd like to talk to your mum. Jasmine's eyes lit up as if he'd just offered her the whole world. Really? You want to meet my mum? I do. But first, let me grab that milk you asked for, and maybe a few other things that might help. Robert went to the kitchen and filled a bag with milk, bread, fruit, and some other groceries. Jasmine watched him with admiration, as if seeing a hero in action. You don't have to give all this. Jasmine, when someone's sick, you don't think about what you should or shouldn't give. You help because it's the right thing to do. As they walked, Robert noticed how the scenery gradually changed. The wide, tree-lined streets of his neighborhood gave way to narrow alleys, modest houses, and small shops. Jasmine walked beside him, pointing out familiar places and sharing little stories about the area. That's the school I go to. Miss Anderson is really nice. She lets me borrow books sometimes. She pointed to a small, well-kept building. And that's Davis Pharmacy. Mr. Davis always gets mad when Mom can't pay for medicine right away, but in the end he lets her take it on credit. Robert noticed how Jasmine knew every person, every business. She was clearly a beloved child in the community, despite the hardships she faced. We're here, Jasmine announced, stopping in front of a small two-story house. We live in the back room. They climbed an outside staircase, leading to a small structure in the backyard. Jasmine knocked lightly on the door. Mom, I brought someone to see you. The door opened slowly, revealing a woman in her 40s. Despite her weakened appearance, Robert recognized her immediately. It was Tanya Williams, who had worked at his company over 10 years ago. The recognition was mutual. Tanya's eyes widened, and she covered her mouth, clearly shocked. Mr. Miller? What? How? Hi, Tanya. Your daughter came to see me today. She said you were sick. Tanya looked at Jasmine with a mix of surprise and disapproval. Jasmine, didn't I tell you not to bother anyone? How did you end up at Mr. Miller's house? Mom, you coughed up blood yesterday. I got scared. Jasmine defended herself, clutching the grocery bag. And look, he brought things for us. Tanya seemed embarrassed, but Robert stepped forward. Tanya, may I come in? I'd like to talk to you. The small room was simple, but clean and tidy. A single bed, a small table with 2 chairs, a 2-burner stove, and a tiny fridge that hummed constantly. Despite its simplicity, there was obvious care in the details: colorful curtains, a few plants by the window, and Jasmine's drawings taped to the wall. Mr. Miller, I don't know what my daughter told you, but she said I'm her grandfather, Tanya. The silence that followed was deafening. Tanya lowered her eyes, and Jasmine glanced between them, trying to understand the tension in the air. Sir, let me explain, Tanya began, but her voice faltered as she broke into violent coughs. Robert grew alarmed when he spotted flecks of blood on the handkerchief she used to cover her mouth. Tanya, you need medical attention. This isn't just a cold. I know, doctor, but private care is expensive and the wait at the clinic is so long. I scheduled an appointment 2 months ago and they still haven't called me. Jasmine moved closer to her mother and gently held her hand. Mom, tell Mr. Miller the truth. Tell him about Dad. Tanya looked at her daughter with a mix of love and pain in her eyes. Jasmine, you don't understand. Yes, I do, Mom. I know you made up the story about the grandfather because you didn't want me growing up without family, but I heard you talking to Mrs. Rodriguez the other day. Robert felt his heart race. There was more to this story than he'd imagined. Tanya, please tell me what really happened. I remember you from the company, but I don't understand this connection. Tanya took a deep breath, fighting back another coughing fit. "Mr. Miller, when I worked at your company, I got involved with one of the employees. His name was Marcus Johnson from the construction department." She looked tenderly at Jasmine. "When I found out I was pregnant, he disappeared, just never showed up to work again. And then, rumors started spreading at the company. People said I was making it up, that I was trying to pull a scam. HR started treating me badly, questioning my work, inventing problems that didn't exist." Robert vaguely recalled some situation involving a pregnant employee, but the details were hazy. "Go on." "One day, Mr. Peterson, who was the HR manager at the time, called me into his office. He said I was being fired for cause, that they'd discovered I was lying about the pregnancy to get job security." Tanya wiped away a stray tear. "I tried to explain, to show them the tests, but he wouldn't listen." "My God, Tanya. I was 5 months along, Mr. Miller. I couldn't get another job anywhere." She looked at Jasmine. "When she was born, I moved here, started cleaning houses, doing odd jobs at small businesses, but it's always been hard." Robert felt a weight in his chest. Howard Peterson had been his HR manager for years, until retirement. He'd always trusted him with personnel matters. "Tanya, but why did you tell Jasmine I was her grandfather?" Tanya lowered her eyes, clearly ashamed. Because you were the only person at the company who always treated me with respect. You were always kind, always asked how I was doing. When you found out I was pregnant, you even congratulated me." She took a deep breath. "When Jasmine started asking about her father and family, I didn't know what to say. A child needs some kind of reference, a name to hold on to when things get tough. So you made up that I was her grandfather. I know it was wrong, Mr. Miller, but I wanted her to know there was at least one good person in the world who would care about her if I wasn't here anymore." Jasmine, who had been quietly listening to the conversation, moved closer to her mother. "Mom, you're not going anywhere. We're going to take care of you." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Robert watched the interaction between mother and daughter with a feeling he couldn't quite define. There was something about this situation that stirred deep memories, values he had forgotten over the years, spent solely focused on business. "Tanya, I want you to tell me something honestly. Are you sure you were unfairly fired?" "Yes, Mr. Miller. I did my job right, never caused any trouble. They only started picking on me after they found out about the pregnancy." "And Jasmine's father? Are you sure he worked for the company?" "Yes, Marcus Johnson. He worked with Foreman Jack on the team handling downtown construction. We met in the company cafeteria." Robert mentally noted every detail. Something about this story didn't add up, and he intended to find out what. "Tanya, do you trust me?" She looked at him, surprised. "Of course, Mr. Miller. You've always been a good person." "Then I want you to let me take care of that cough. Today. And afterward, we'll figure out what really happened at the company 10 years ago." "Mr. Miller, I can't accept—" "You're not accepting anything I'm offering. And Jasmine." He turned to the girl. "Do you trust me too?" Jasmine nodded vigorously. "Then both of you are coming with me now. We're going to the hospital. We'll take care of your mother, and then we'll talk properly about all of this." At the private hospital where Robert had medical privileges, Tanya was seen immediately. Tests revealed bacterial pneumonia, which, if left untreated, could have become very serious. The doctor recommended immediate hospitalization and a course of specific antibiotics. While Tanya was being treated, Robert spoke with Jasmine in the waiting room. "How are you feeling about all this?" "Relieved," she answered honestly. "I knew my mom was really sick, but she always said she'd get better on her own." "And what your mom told me about the grandfather story?" Jasmine swung her legs on the chair, which was too tall for her. "I kind of already suspected it wasn't true. My mom's not good at lying." She looked at Robert with her big, clever eyes. "But I liked meeting you anyway." Robert smiled. There was something refreshing about the child's honesty. "Jasmine, whether I'm your grandfather or not, I want you to know I'm going to help you both. Your mother was wronged, and that's something I need to fix." "Why?" You don't even really know us." The question caught Robert off guard. Why did he care so much? Maybe it was the memory of his own humble childhood before he built his business empire. Maybe it was the thought of his late wife Elizabeth, who had always dreamed of helping children in need. Or maybe it was simply because, for the first time in years, he felt his life had a purpose beyond profits and losses. Because it's the right thing to do, Jasmine. And because you two reminded me of important things I'd forgotten. 3 days later, Tanya was discharged from the hospital. The treatment had worked perfectly, and she was feeling better than she had in months. During this time, Jasmine had stayed at Robert's mansion under the care of Mrs. Jenkins, who quickly grew fond of the bright and well-mannered girl. "Mr. Miller," Tanya said when he picked her up from the hospital, "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us." "You don't need to thank me, Tanya, but there's something I need to tell you. I looked into what happened at the company 10 years ago. Tanya's face tensed. "What did you find out?" "That you were the victim of a much greater injustice than we imagined." Back at the house with Jasmine playing in the garden with a book Mrs. Jenkins had given her, Robert sat down with Tanya for a serious conversation. "Tanya, I managed to locate some old company files. I also spoke with Jack, the construction foreman who still works with me. And Marcus Johnson really did exist and actually worked at the company, but he didn't disappear because he wanted to. He was abruptly transferred to a project in Chicago without any warning." Tanya's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "The transfer was ordered by Howard, the HR manager, and it wasn't a normal transfer. According to Jack, Marcus protested, saying he couldn't move because he had personal matters to settle in New York City, but he was threatened with termination if he didn't go." "But why? Why would they do that?" Robert took a deep breath before continuing. "Because Howard had been embezzling money from the company for years. He used employees as fronts, created ghost employees, inflated purchase costs." He looked Tanya in the eyes. "And when Marcus started noticing irregularities at the construction site, Howard needed to get rid of him." "Oh my God, your firing was to erase any connection between you and Marcus. If you had kept working and eventually reached out to him again, you might have uncovered the truth about what really happened." Tanya fell silent for a few minutes, processing the information. "So, Marcus never knew about Jasmine?" "No, and he likely spent all these years thinking you had walked away from him by choice." Tears began streaming down Tanya's face. "Mr. Miller, do you think you could find him?" "I already did. He still lives in Chicago. He works for a small construction company, got married 5 years ago, and has 2 young children." Tanya's heart broke a little more. "So he moved on with his life?" "Tanya, I can reach out to him if you want. Explain what happened. Tell him about Jasmine." Tanya shook her head slowly. "No, Mr. Miller, it wouldn't be fair to his family now. Jasmine and I have managed just fine all these years. We won't disrupt his life now." Robert admired Tanya's dignity, but something inside him protested against the injustice of the whole situation. "Tanya, can I make you an offer?" "Of course. How would you feel about coming back to work for my company, in a better position, with a fair salary and full benefits, and Jasmine could attend a good private school, where she'd have all the opportunities she deserves?" Tanya looked at him as if he had suggested something impossible. "Mr. Miller, I can't accept that. It would be charity, and It wouldn't be charity, Tanya. It would be justice. And it would also be my way of making up for past mistakes. But people will talk. Let them talk." Robert stood and walked to the window, where he could see Jasmine reading in the garden. "You know, Tanya, I've spent the last 15 years of my life thinking only about money, about growing the company, increasing profits. I forgot that a business is made up of people, and people deserve to be treated with dignity." He turned back to her. "The two of you reminded me of that. You reminded me of the man I used to be before I lost myself in business. Besides," he continued, "Jasmine is a very smart girl. She deserves every opportunity money can buy. And you deserve the stability you should have had from the beginning." That night, after Tanya and Jasmine returned home with the promise of moving to a better apartment that Robert had offered, he found himself alone in his mansion, reflecting on the past few days. For the first time in years, he felt his life had meaning. There was something powerful in knowing his actions could change other people's lives for the better. It was a feeling he had lost somewhere between spreadsheets, meetings, and financial reports. Mrs. Jenkins, who had clearly been moved by Tanya and Jasmine's story, entered the room with a cup of coffee. "Mr. Miller, may I say something?" "Of course, Jenkins. You did the right thing." Mrs. Elizabeth would be proud. The mention of his late wife made Robert's heart tighten. Elizabeth had always been the voice of conscience in his life, reminding him to look beyond numbers and see the people. "You think so?" "I'm sure of it. Mrs. Elizabeth always said money only means something if we use it to do good." The following Monday, Robert arrived at the company with a determination he hadn't felt in years. The first thing he did was call a meeting with the entire board. "Gentlemen," he said, looking around the conference table, "I've recently learned that our company has been the site of some serious injustices in the past, and I intend to correct that." The directors exchanged glances, clearly confused. "What are you talking about, Robert?" asked Michael, the financial director. "I'm talking about employees who were unfairly wronged. I'm talking about internal policies that allowed people to be fired without just cause. And I'm talking about changes that need to be implemented immediately." For the next 2 hours, Robert laid out a comprehensive plan to overhaul the company's HR policies. It included reviewing all terminations from the past 10 years, implementing whistleblower channels for abuse of power cases, creating a support program for employees in vulnerable situations, and establishing strict policies against discrimination of any kind. "Robert," said Jennifer, the marketing director, "these programs will cost a lot of money." "So what?" Robert stared at her. "Our company makes millions every year. Don't tell me we can't invest a relatively small amount to ensure our employees are treated with dignity. But the shareholders will have to understand that a company that treats its employees well is more productive and profitable in the long run." There was resistance, of course. Some directors argued he was being overly emotional, making decisions based on feelings rather than business logic, but Robert didn't back down. "Listen carefully," he said, slamming his hand on the table. "Either we implement these changes, or I sell my stake in the company and use the money to start a new one that does things right from the beginning." The threat worked. Robert was the majority shareholder and founder of the company. Without him, the company would lose not only its leader, but also most of its credibility in the market. A week later, Tanya started working as supervisor of the new Employee Wellness Department. It was a position created especially for her, where she could use her personal experience to help other employees facing hardships. On her first day, Robert took her on a tour of the company's facilities. When they passed the cafeteria, Tanya stopped and looked around nostalgically. "This is where I met Marcus Johnson," she said softly. "Do you still think about him?" "Sometimes, but not with resentment. Now that I know what really happened, I just hope he's happy." "Tanya, are you sure you don't want me to reach out to him? Jasmine deserves to know her father." Tanya shook her head. "Mr. Miller, Jasmine has you now, and that's more than she ever dreamed of having." The remark touched Robert deeply. Without realizing it, he had become a father figure to Jasmine, and she had become the daughter he never had. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Jasmine adjusted quickly to her new private school. At first, some classmates made comments about her humble background, but it didn't last long. The girl was naturally charismatic and bright, and soon won over both her peers and teachers. "Mr. Miller," she said one afternoon when he picked her up from school, "Ms. Johnson told me I can participate in the science fair next term." "Really? And what do you want to present?" "I want to do a project on how to help underprivileged communities with sustainable energy. The teacher said it's a very important topic." Robert smiled. At 9 years old, Jasmine already showed a social awareness many adults lacked. "Do you want some help with the project?" "Yes, can you teach me about companies that help the environment?" Over the next few months, Robert and Jasmine spent many afternoons working on the science fair project together. It was time he came to value more than any business meeting. Jasmine asked insightful questions, had creative ideas, and showed a genuine passion for learning. "Mr. Miller," she said one day while researching solar panels, "when I grow up, I want to have a company like yours." "Oh, and what kind of company would that be?" "A company that helps people, just like you're helping me and my mum." The simplicity of her answer made Robert reflect on the legacy he was building, not just in terms of wealth and property, but in values and impact on people's lives. The science fair was a resounding success. Jasmine presented a detailed project on how small communities could use solar energy to reduce costs and improve quality of life. The project included financial calculations, environmental impact analysis, and even a working model of a sustainable home. "How does a 9-year-old know so much about this?" asked one impressed judge. "My grandpa taught me," Jasmine replied naturally. Robert, sitting in the audience, felt his heart warm. Jasmine had started calling him Grandpa of the Heart a few weeks earlier, and he had grown used to the title. It was a relationship that had blossomed organically, built on genuine affection and mutual respect. Jasmine's project won first place in the sustainability category. During the award ceremony, she dedicated the prize to "My Grandpa of the Heart, who taught me that we can use knowledge to help others." That evening at home, Robert talked with Tanya about the day. "She really sees me as her grandpa." "And you? How do you see her?" Robert didn't hesitate. "As the granddaughter I never thought I'd have. As the most special girl I've ever known." "Mr. Miller, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Did you never want to have children?" Robert grew thoughtful for a moment. "Elizabeth and I tried for years. We did treatments, consulted many doctors, but it never happened." He glanced out the window where Jasmine was playing in the garden. "After Elizabeth passed, I sort of gave up on the idea of having a family. I thought that part of my life was over." "And now?" "Now I realize that family isn't just about blood. It's about choice, about care, about love." A few months later, Robert made a decision that surprised everyone. He announced he was creating a foundation dedicated to helping vulnerable families, especially single mothers and underprivileged children. "The Elizabeth and Jasmine Foundation," he said during the launch meeting, "will be funded with 30% of the company's profits, and its goal will be to ensure no talented child misses opportunities due to lack of resources." The news made headlines, and soon Robert found himself sought after by journalists wanting to know about the inspiration behind the foundation. "Mr. Miller," a reporter asked during an interview, "what motivated you to create this foundation?" "An 8-year-old girl who knocked on my door asking for milk and taught me the true meaning of the word family." The interview aired on national television, and Robert decided to show it to Jasmine and Tanya. "Am I going to be on TV?" asked Jasmine, excited. "Not exactly, but your story will inspire many others." "Our story," corrected Jasmine, "because now we're a real family." The foundation grew quickly. Tanya took over coordinating the family support programs, using her own experience to understand and help other women in similar situations. Jasmine became a sort of unofficial mascot for the foundation, participating in events and always impressing people with her maturity and wisdom. A year after Robert and Jasmine first met, they threw a big party at the mansion to celebrate the girl's 10th birthday. The party brought together company employees, foundation beneficiaries, Jasmine's teachers, and the entire Riverside Heights community that had witnessed the family's transformation. "Mr. Miller," Jasmine said during her thank you speech, "when I knocked on your door that day, I just wanted a little milk for my mom. But you gave me so much more than that. You gave me a family, you gave me opportunities, you gave me the chance to dream big." The audience was moved, and many had tears in their eyes. "But you know what I learned this whole year? I learned that when we help someone, we're really helping ourselves too, because Mr. Miller was a very lonely man before he met us, and now he smiles every day." Robert felt his eyes fill with tears. The girl was right. She and Tanya had changed his life as much as he'd changed theirs. During the party, an unexpected surprise happened. Mrs. Jenkins approached Robert with an envelope in her hands. "Mr. Miller, this arrived for you today. It's from Chicago." Robert opened the envelope and found a handwritten letter. It was from Marcus Johnson. Dear Mr. Miller, I heard from a colleague who works in New York City about the news segment on television about your foundation. When I saw the name Tanya Williams mentioned, my heart nearly stopped. 11 years ago, I was forced to move to Chicago overnight. I never understood why, and I've always wondered what happened to someone very special I once knew in New York City. If this Tanya is the same person I knew, I'd very much like to know how she's doing. And if the girl Jasmine is, well, if she's who I think she is, I'd like to meet her. I know I have no right to ask anything after so long, but if possible, I'd really like to talk with you all. Sincerely, Marcus Johnson. Robert looked around the party, found Tanya talking with some guests and approached her. Tanya, I need to speak with you privately. In the house's study, away from the party noise, Robert showed Tanya the letter. She read it with tears filling her eyes. He remembers me. What do you want to do? Tanya stayed silent for several minutes, looking out the window at the party where Jasmine happily played with the guests. I want to meet him, but I want it to be Jasmine's decision too. If she wants to meet her real father, I'll support her. If she doesn't, I'll respect that. And what about the fact that he has a new family? If he wrote that letter, it means he's willing to face the consequences. But I won't disrupt anyone's life. I just want him to know Jasmine exists and that she's a wonderful girl. They decided to talk to Jasmine the next day, once the excitement of the party had passed. During the conversation, Jasmine listened with the maturity she'd developed over that year. So my real father wants to meet me. Yes, Tanya replied. But the decision is yours, sweetheart. You don't have to do anything. Jasmine thought for a moment. I want to meet him, but he needs to know I already have a grandpa and that won't change. Robert smiled and hugged Jasmine. It'll never change, my dear. Never. The meeting with Marcus Johnson happened 2 weeks later at the Foundation's office. He came from Chicago just to meet Jasmine and talk to Tanya. Tanya, he said as soon as he saw her, you look beautiful, and this is Jasmine, your daughter. Marcus knelt in front of Jasmine and with tears in his eyes said, Hi, Princess, I'm so sorry I wasn't here for you and your mum. It's okay, Jasmine replied simply. You didn't know I existed, but now you do, and that's what matters. During the conversation, Marcus explained he was married with 2 young children, but had told his wife everything before coming to New York City. She understood, he said. And she said Jasmine will always be welcome in our home if she wants. And I'll always be welcome here too, Jasmine said, looking at Robert, because now I have 2 families, the family by blood and the family of the heart. The child's simplicity and wisdom moved everyone present. In the months that followed, a healthy routine was established. Jasmine spent some vacations in Chicago getting to know her half-siblings and stepmother, who welcomed her with genuine warmth. But her main home remained New York City, near Robert and Tanya's work. Mr. Miller, Jasmine said one afternoon while they did homework together, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Do you regret opening the door that day when I knocked, asking for milk? Robert stopped what he was doing and looked into her eyes. Jasmine, opening that door was the best decision I've ever made in my life. Why? Because you 2 reminded me what really matters in life. You showed me money isn't everything. Success isn't just about numbers. And family is about loving and caring for each other. And I learned that even when things are hard, there's always someone good in the world willing to help. That's true, Jasmine. And you know what else? What? You taught me I can be a grandpa without ever being a father, and that's a gift I'll never be able to thank you enough for. 2 years later, Jasmine had become one of the brightest students in her school. She actively participated in the Foundation's projects, helped Tanya with volunteer work in the community, and had developed a passion for medicine. When I grow up, she said one day, I want to be a doctor to help underprivileged children, and I want to keep working with the Foundation too. Are you sure? Robert asked. Robert, you still have plenty of time to decide about your career. I'm sure, because I want to help other kids like Grandpa helped us. I want them to know there's always hope, even when it seems like there isn't. The Foundation had grown exponentially. It was already serving over 500 families in New York City and had expanded to other cities. Tanya had become a national reference in programs supporting single mothers, being invited to give talks and consultations across the country. "Mr. Miller," she said one day, "sometimes I can't believe the life we're living now." Why? Because 3 years ago, I was desperate, sick, with no money and no hope. And today, I have a job I love. My daughter is getting every opportunity I ever dreamed for her, and I feel like I'm making a difference in other people's lives. You've always been a special person, Tanya. You just needed a chance. No, Mr. Miller, I needed someone to believe in me, and you did that. During a foundation review meeting, Robert presented impressive numbers. Over 2,000 children served, 500 scholarships granted, 200 families lifted out of poverty, and 50 community projects implemented. But the most important number, he said, looking at Jasmine, who was present at the meeting, isn't in the statistics. It's the number of lives transformed by love and hope. After the meeting, Jasmine approached the microphone. "Can I say something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "I want to thank all of you who work at the foundation. You're helping kids like me have a better future. But I want you to know your work also makes adults better." She looked at Robert. "My heart grandpa told me that before he met me, he only thought about money. Now he thinks about how to use money to do good. That means when we help a child, we're not just changing their future. We're changing the present for adults too." The audience rose in emotional applause. That night at home, Robert reflected on the journey that had begun 3 years earlier with a simple knock on the door. A girl asking for milk had become the most important person in his life. An unfairly treated employee had become his right hand in the biggest social endeavor of his career, and he, a cold businessman focused only on profits, had rediscovered the true meaning of success. "Mr. Miller," Jasmine said, appearing at the office door in her pajamas, "can I sleep here tonight? Mom said it was okay." "Of course, sweetheart. Do you want me to tell you a story?" "Yes, but not a made-up one. I want you to tell our story. The story of how we met." Robert smiled and settled into the armchair, with Jasmine curled up under a blanket beside him. "Once upon a time," he began, "there was a very rich man who lived alone in a big, empty mansion. And then a very brave girl knocked on his door asking for milk," Jasmine continued. "And that girl changed that man's life forever," Robert finished. "And the man changed the girl's life too, and her mom's and hundreds of other people's. And they lived happily ever after," Robert teased. "No," Jasmine answered, surprising him. "They lived busy ever after, busy helping other people be happy too." Robert hugged Jasmine tighter. At 12 years old, she had grasped the essence of a life well lived, better than many adults. "Jasmine, can I tell you a secret?" "Sure." "You saved my life that day." "How?" "I was becoming a bitter, lonely person. I was losing the ability to feel joy, to care about others. You brought me back to life." Jasmine was quiet for a moment. "You know what's funny, Grandpa?" "What?" "I went to your house asking for milk to save my mom, but in the end, the one who was saved was you." Robert smiled. Once again, Jasmine had hit the nail on the head. "That's true, my dear, that's true." The following weekend, Robert organized a special meeting. He wanted to formalize something he had been thinking about for months. "Tanya, Jasmine," he said with documents spread across the table, "I want to propose something to you." "What is it, Mr. Miller?" "I want to officially adopt Jasmine, not to replace her biological father, but to ensure she has all the legal rights as my granddaughter. And I want you, Tanya, to be my official partner in the foundation." Tanya was speechless. "Mr. Miller, this is—" "It's what I've always wanted," Jasmine said before her mother could finish. "Can I have the last name Miller, too? If your mother agrees, you can be Jasmine Williams Miller." Tanya began to cry. "Mr. Miller, this is more than I ever dreamed of for my daughter. And for me, it's the fulfillment of a dream I didn't even know I had." The adoption papers were processed in record time. Robert used his connections to speed up the bureaucracy, and within 2 months, Jasmine officially became his adoptive granddaughter. On the day of the formalization at the courthouse, Jasmine wore a white dress Robert had bought especially for the occasion. When the clerk asked if she understood what was happening, she answered clearly, "I'm making official what was already true in my heart. This man is my grandfather, and I am his granddaughter. Now the papers will say the same thing our hearts already knew." After the ceremony, there was a small celebration at the mansion. Marcus came from Chicago with his family to honor the moment. There was no jealousy or resentment. Everyone understood that love has no limits and that Jasmine was lucky to have so many people who loved her. "Robert," Marcus said privately, "thank you for taking care of my daughter when I couldn't. Thank you for understanding that love isn't about possession. Jasmine has room in her heart for all of us. She's a special girl. She is. And she's going to change the world when she grows up." 5 years later, Jasmine was 17 and preparing for her medical school entrance exams. She had become student council president, coordinated school social projects, and was an active volunteer at the foundation. "Grandpa," she said one day, "do you remember that day when I was 8 and knocked on your door?" "Like it was yesterday." "Did you ever imagine we'd come this far?" Robert thought about the question. "Imagine? No, but I hoped. From the very first day, I felt you two were special, and that our story would be special too." And was it? It was the most beautiful one of my life. Jasmine had grown into an impressive young woman, tall, intelligent, determined, and with a social awareness that amazed everyone around her. She had inherited her mother's beauty and the resilience she'd developed through childhood hardships. "Grandpa, can I ask you a silly question?" "There are no silly questions between us. If I hadn't knocked on your door that day, what do you think would have happened to your life?" Robert paused to consider the question, something he had wondered himself at times. "I think I would have stayed rich but empty. I would have died alone, never knowing the true meaning of the word love." "And what about me and my mom?" "You would have managed because you're strong, but maybe you wouldn't have had all the opportunities you did. And I would have missed the chance to meet the two most important people in my life. So it was good for everyone. It was perfect for everyone." On the day of her high school graduation, Jasmine was chosen as the class speaker. Her speech moved the entire audience. "When I was 8 years old, my mother was sick and we didn't even have money for food. I left home determined to get some milk to make her porridge. I knocked on the door of a mansion and changed my life forever. But it wasn't just my life that changed. The fate of the man who opened that door also changed. And so did the fate of hundreds of other families who were helped by the foundation we created together. I learned that sometimes when we ask for help, we're not just receiving. We're giving someone the opportunity to be better than they were before. Today, I know there's no such thing as coincidence. There's destiny. And my destiny was to find a family with heart, just as his destiny was to find a greater purpose for his life. To all of you graduating today, I want to leave you with a message. Never be afraid to knock on the right door. And when someone knocks on your door, remember, your destiny might be waiting on the other side." The audience rose in applause. Robert, seated in the front row beside Tanya and Marcus Johnson, couldn't hold back his tears of pride. After graduation, Jasmine spent the summer volunteering at medical clinics in underserved communities, preparing for the medical school program she'd start the following year. "Grandpa," she said one evening after returning from a day of volunteering, "today I treated a little girl who reminded me so much of myself when I was young." "How so?" "She was at the clinic with her mother, and you could tell they were struggling. But the girl was brave. She took care of her mom, asked smart questions about the treatment." Jasmine smiled. "I gave them my number and said if they needed anything, just call." And did they? They did. The mother lost her job, and they were about to lose their home. I spoke with the foundation's team and we managed to help them. Robert smiled. The cycle was repeating itself, but now it was Jasmine on the other side, offering help. "You're becoming an extraordinary woman, Jasmine." "I'm becoming the woman you all taught me to be. You, my mom, even my dad. All of you showed me that we can choose to be better every day." In her senior year of high school, Jasmine had created her own project, a mentorship program, where students from private schools helped public school students with their studies. The program was so successful that it was officially adopted by the city's education department. "How are you so wise at 17?" Robert asked one day. "Because I learned early that life can change in an instant. So there's no time to waste on nonsense. You have to focus on what really matters." And what really matters? Loving people, helping those in need, and leaving the world a little better than we found it. The end. So, dear listener, what did you think of this touching story? Share in the comments if you believe small gestures can change lives forever. Your opinion means so much to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.